All right. I think I went live, hopefully. Let's see. Hello, friends. Let me know if you can hear and see me. Sorry about the delay there. I had a little bit of trouble setting up the camera. Excellent, excellent. Well, hello, friends. Welcome back to SerenityOS Office Hours. And special welcome to somebody named Well, who just found the channel a couple of days ago. Nice to have you all here. So what we do here on Fridays, if you're not familiar, is that we take questions about SerenityOS, whether they are technical or non-technical, and also about SerenityOS adjacent subjects like programming. And then we try to sort of work with whatever questions come up. So last week I was sick, so we didn't have office hours, so it's really nice to be back. Unfortunately, today I will have to leave half an hour early because I got a text message from a relative that they need to be picked up from a train station a bit earlier than originally expected. But that's in 1.5 hours from now, so we should be good for a while. So while we wait for people to trickle in and drop some questions, let's see. So what's been going on lately? I noticed a lot of people watched the video I did about the Natalie Ruby compiler, which was really cool. People seem to really enjoy just seeing the process of contributing to an unrelated open source project. That was really fun. And I'm glad people liked it, and I'm probably going to do something similar in the future to some other project. We'll see. Let's see. So, hello, Yippee. I am indeed still uploading, yes. The time here at present is 4:10 p.m. So it's all good. Sid the Smarty, there is no plan. There's no plan whatsoever. Coding Genesis, how am I today? Today I am doing pretty well. It's been a very busy day, so I got up very early today to be a chauffeur, driving people to the train station, and I've been up since 5 a.m. because of that, and then I had meetings and stuff, so very busy day, but after this comes the weekend, which is going to be awesome. I hope all of you are doing okay as well. Sebastian says, another one that found the channel a couple of months ago. Really nice to see that people are still finding the channel, because as I mentioned on Twitter a few days ago, the growth of the channel kind of slowed down a little bit, but I really felt like that was kind of a good thing, because it was growing really fast for a while and it made me a little bit nervous. So it's nice. It's nice that people are coming into the audience at a reasonable pace, so that we can get to know everybody. Which is probably a bit ambitious, but Nate Rush says, how do you like to structure your days with work? Do you wake up and program as soon as possible, or are you a classic night owl? Would love to hear about how you balance your work on Serenity with other life things. So I wish I could program right when I wake up, but I am not smart when I get out of bed. So I'm, as you say, like a classic night owl. I think that's fairly common in this profession for some reason. I keep trying to learn to be a morning person, but it's just I'm not having much success so far. It's just it has all these benefits, right? Like our entire society is structured around the idea of certain hours being the common shared hours, and it would be great if I would feel great and be productive during those hours, but it's just not really natural. Maybe some people can relate to that. So, we compromise. But how I balance my things, I don't have that much of a structure. The main guiding thing that I have, the guiding principle, is that I want to do something meaningful, something useful every day. And whatever that is, when it comes to this project, the Serenity project, it's sometimes there are all these things that need to be done, which are not necessarily directly programming, right? For example, this week I've been doing a bunch of interviews and stuff like that, and just contact with media, which eventually turns into articles, turns into podcasts, stuff like that. And I struggle sometimes to feel productive when I'm doing that because I'm not producing code. But hopefully it generates something that people will still enjoy, and that might also help us reach more developers that didn't find the system yet. So let's see. Well was asking, do you really think that C is still the best preference for OS/kernel programming, or C++ can do wonders too? I don't think C is the best preference for any type of programming. I would say C++ is a better choice in every situation where you're choosing between C or C++. I would always choose C++. I don't see any reason to limit yourself to C. Belotto says, you're actually inspiring me to learn C and later C++. It seems so easy when you have actual experience and knowledge of the language. Yeah, that's definitely true. Like, while it can seem daunting at first, if you're not familiar with the language, once you get familiar with the vocabulary of the language and the various sort of patterns and stuff, you find yourself, you're going to feel very powerful, I guess. It's something that I love hearing this from people who get into low-level programming after they do it for a while, and they say that they feel so powerful. I've heard that many times from many people. It's really fun and a very relatable feeling. So I think you're going to do fine with that. Let's see. Hello, Paul. Red Shark Tooth says, total noob here, just to share something. I used a profiler for the first time on my Python program, and it was an awesome experience looking at the visualizations in SnakeViz. Sunburst diagrams of function execution times, seeing the bottlenecks, I was able to cut down execution time by like 10x LOL. Just really cool how visual analysis helped me, at least. Indeed. I absolutely love using visualization tools to understand performance problems. I think the human brain is really good at a lot of things, but one thing that it's particularly good at is visual pattern matching. And if you're only ever using text tools, you kind of miss out on harnessing that part of your brain. And by just blowing things up into visualizations, you can allow your brain to work for you. And I certainly find it super helpful, and it's much, much easier to spot little issues if I can see them visualized. And profiling tools in particular, like actually, I don't even know what a sunburst diagram is, so maybe we should look that up. Never heard of it. Maybe you mean a flame graph? Oh, one of these. Oh, okay. That's a sunburst diagram. I never knew the name of that. I guess I always thought of that as a disk usage diagram, but obviously that's not what it is. It's a sunburst diagram. Okay. Cool. Marco Santos says, C is the neighbor dog that barks at you when you pass, but doesn't do anything when you try to pet him. I'm not sure I understand the metaphor, but all right, all right. Planet 10 says, hope you're having a wonderful day. How are you doing? I'm doing okay. Just a bit tired. A busy day. How are you doing? Well says, not sure if you do it on your live streams, but there's a guy claiming that C++ is the worst possible selection for writing an operating system. You can check the description of that video for the reasons. So when it comes to people having these strong opinions about things that they're not doing, they tend to be irrelevant for the most part. I've been building an operating system using C++, and it's been a highly productive experience. And if you ask anybody who's participated in the SerenityOS project in the last 3 years, they tend to also say that it's been a highly productive experience. And I don't know this person who makes this claim that it's a worst possible selection, but I have a feeling, just a hunch, that they didn't spend any significant time actually doing this. So I would be careful with listening to people who don't have experience complaining about something. GTBuzz86 says, does anyone have a recommendation for a C# profiler? I do not personally, maybe somebody else does. I have very little experience with C#. I used it 10 years ago to interface with some thing. What was it? Some Microsoft server that did something. I forget. Esseler says, there, Andreas, what part of SerenityOS are you focusing on right now? So right now, the thing I was looking into last night and a little bit this morning was JavaScript related or web engine related. I wanted to investigate what it might look like if you use the garbage collector as the foundational memory manager for the entire web engine, instead of at the moment we use a hybrid approach of reference counted C++ objects and garbage collected JavaScript objects. And I was kind of messing around with what it might look like if you were to move the entire stack onto the garbage collector, and found a number of interesting problems with that I don't exactly know how to solve in a nice way, but still exploring. But it's something that I'm generally interested in, just for many reasons. The idea of having a web engine built on top of a garbage collector does feel pretty natural, because the web platform is fundamentally garbage collected. So it would sort of solve a lot of lifetime issues that are really hard to express when you're combining C++ and like regular C++ memory management and garbage collection. Let's see. James Brown says, hi, the other day I was watching your videos, one of your videos where you were developing a small breakout game inside Serenity. In that video, you experienced memory corruption. Did you ever get to the bottom of that? Oh, phew, I don't recall what that was. But it does ring a bell. Like, I think it was that, like, I kept building, and over time something was degrading about the system, and like eventually the program wouldn't even run anymore, and then we rebooted and then it worked, something like that. I don't know that we got to the bottom of that specific issue. It's possible. It's very likely that it's been fixed since then, because that was a long time ago and we have fixed tons of issues, but I don't recall specifically what that was. Marek says, hi, can you develop Serenity from inside Serenity? If not, what is the limitation? What is missing? I don't know what you mean by develop Serenity from inside Serenity. So you would have to be more specific. Let's see. Vesna says, Zdravo, Andreas. Do you like Swedish band Mando Diao? They are great. Greetings from Serbia. I am not super familiar with Mando Diao. I think I've heard a handful of their songs, and they were indeed great, but not great enough that I went to look up their other songs. Still pretty good. They're pretty good. Their popular songs are certainly good, that's for sure. Giovanni says that YouTube channel is full of hatred videos. I guess that's in reference to the anti-C++ operating system video. Yeah, so like obviously we're on YouTube, so there are a lot of people whose YouTube content strategy is to upload angry videos, and there's a huge audience of people who watch angry videos for some reason. So there's this whole incentive structure there that, like, obviously if that is your content strategy, then you're going to just keep making angry videos about everything. So that would just make me trust that person even less if it's somebody who just habitually makes angry videos. Antonio says, do you have your Git aliases somewhere? Saw your last video and the fluidity of your Git usage was amazing. I use Git on the CLI, but clearly I'm nowhere near your level. Impressive. So my Git aliases are very, very simple. Wait, where are they? Alias G. These are the aliases that I have. So let me actually just no, almost. These are the ones that I have, and it's nothing fancy. The main one that people always ask me about is gap, which is git add-p. This is the thing that allows you to stage changes. Instead of like committing everything that you've changed, you can stage individual hunks of the diffs, and that is sort of a central part of my workflow, and how I make like really nice gardened commits. And I actually didn't know about this when I started the channel. I learned about it from people who kept commenting to me saying, dude, try git add-p. And enough people told me about it that I tried it out, and it's just amazing. And I cannot recommend this enough. The rest of it is just shorthand for stuff. Really nothing fancy. I am a big fan of git log --stat, which I have alias to GL, because it adds this thing here at the bottom of every commit, so you can see which files were actually changed in that commit. I feel that it provides that extra bit of context that you can have a commit message that sort of has a high-level overview of what was changed, and then you also see the list of files and how much was changed in each one, and it just, I don't know, it just contextualizes the thing for me, and so I use that. But yeah, those are my Git aliases. Let's see. Red Shark Tooth says, regarding C++ bashing, have you ever seen the deleted Strustrup interview about C++ in '98? Saw it for the first time this week. It's hilarious. I have not seen that. What is a deleted interview? I don't know what that means. I guess that was before Unique Putter, so they had to delete the interview manually. Haha. I'm sorry about that. Let's see. Visual Studio has a profiler built in, says Dave. That is nice. Yes. Christopher Lynn says, your contribution to the Natalie project really made me want to watch you port it over to Serenity. That sounds like it might be a fun project. I bet you it would also be a fun project for somebody else to do. I don't think it would be particularly impossible. I think one of the things is that the Natalie build system uses a bunch of Ruby gems, I guess. So that might be an issue. I don't know how compatible we are. We do have a port of mainline Ruby in Serenity, but I don't know if it's capable of running all of the things used by the Natalie build. Although if it's just a port, we could cross-compile it. Yeah. I don't know. If somebody else doesn't do it, I'll probably eventually do it, but we'll see. Well says, the guys claim the angry C++ man's claims are as follows. 1. Exception handling. No exception handling runtime. Well, we don't use exceptions, so that's fine. 2. You cannot use virtual functions in the kernel. You can, and we do. Std address of is impossible to implement without compiler magics. Okay, this is just completely inaccurate. All of these things are possible in a kernel. You just need to implement a handful of things, and we use much of this in our kernel. So that just sounds like a very uninformed person. Let's see. Dun, 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 dun. Revolution of the Resolution says, how many years did it take you to finish Serenity? Well, are you implying that the system is finished? Because it is certainly not finished. So I have spent personally a bit over 3 years on it so far, 3 years and 2 months. And we're still going, so there's a lot of work to do. I think I'm going to be working on this for many years to come. So I have no idea how many years it's going to take to actually finish, or what it would actually mean for the system to be finished. The lovely thing about it is that it is really fun. So that's not much of an issue. Let's see. S. Seller says, Dear Andreas, could you please let me know about the differences or superiority of the SerenityOS file system and macOS and Windows file structure? So SerenityOS versus Mac Windows file system. I'm not sure exactly what you mean by this. I don't know the differences between the file system. We're using the ext2 file system for our root file system at the moment, which is one of the earlier Linux file systems. So in terms of like it's certainly not superior to any other like modern file system. It's inferior because it's lacking a lot of stability features and like data protection features. What do you call it? Redundancy features or whatever. We don't have journaling, for example. So if you just cut the power to the Serenity machine, you may very well end up losing data or end up with your file system in an inconsistent state with no clear path to a clean recovery. So it's not very strong in that way. It's an area where we need to improve. It's just a matter of somebody deciding that that's what they want to work on. Oh, forgot to put the FAQ URL down here, by the way. Okay, there we go. If it comes to just file structure, like the way the file system is laid out, it's very similar to a typical Unix system, like modern Linux, modern BSD, with, you know, the /bin, /dev, stuff like that. So I don't know exactly what it is that you want me to answer here. So I'm just going to move on to the next question. Block Builder says that they need to start using git add-p. Yes, seriously, if you are using Git at the moment and you have not tried git add-p, try git add-p. You are most likely going to enjoy it. It has been absolutely amazing for me personally. Let's see. Michael says, seeing you write such detailed commit message explaining the context of the changes made me do the same. Oh, explaining the context of the changes made me do the same thing. I always did small commits and expressive messages, but never considered going beyond the line. Right. Yes. I think it's I sometimes think to myself that if the one change I make in this life is to convince more people to write better commit messages, then I will be happy with what I achieved. Um, Good commit messages they're just a gift to your future self. And you don't really want to hold back when you are making gifts for your future self. Linus asks, will 2022 be the year of the SerenityOS desktop? That is a good question. I think probably not. But it's something to chase, isn't it? I think we're definitely going to improve massively in 2022, and then improve massively in 2023, and so on. And I'm really curious to see how we improve and what ends up becoming like the big focus items of next year. The project is still very young, and it's kind of interesting if you think about that, because if this had been a more specific project, to say that we were building only a file manager or terminal emulator, or we were building an image editor, or even a web browser, but if you had like a very specific focus, then 3 years into it would mean that we're 3 years in, we're starting to get serious and mature, but because of our insanely broad scope, 3 years is not that much. So if you sort of flatten out those 3 years on all of the things that we're building, we are really quite young, I would say. So I like that. I like that it's still so much up in the air, and like we don't know what we're gonna do next year, or like who's gonna join us and become a fellow developer. I like to imagine that we haven't even found like half of the Serenity developers yet, because they don't know about the project yet. And that is why I go and do interviews and podcasts and things like that, so that we can find our fellow Serenity developers. Let's see. Well asks, how long have you been programming in C++? There are two answers to that question. The first time I encountered the language, I was a very long time ago, when I was 12 or 13 or something like that. And I got a book at the library about it, and I tried to learn some of the very basics, but I just kind of struggled to wrap my head around even the basics. And I guess that would be like 23 years ago or something like that. But when I started doing it seriously was when I joined open source projects. So I started hacking on KDE and Qt, and then WebKit. So that like more serious engagement with C++ started, I think, in 2004, I think. 04 or 05. So that would be, I don't know, 17 years ago at this point. So I've been doing it for a while. Of course, the language has changed a lot in that time, and I have had periods where I did less of C++ and more of other stuff. But I guess I would say for the last 17 years, I have been taking the language seriously, at least, and trying to be good at it, and trying to get better at it. Fernando says, are there any upcoming meetups or events you plan to attend in Europe? There's nothing I am planning to attend at the moment, but maybe something comes up. I don't have any plans, as you can imagine. Let's see. Vector Freedom says, has anyone succeeded in a bare metal install of Serenity on modern hardware? This idea fascinates me. If not, do you foresee when that will be possible? I know that people have succeeded in various bare metal installs, but I don't generally I don't generally follow that subject so much. I'm not personally super interested in bare metal hacking at the moment. So the best I can recommend is to join our Discord server and ask people in the bare metal channel. We have a dedicated channel for the subject of bare metal Serenity. And the people in there will surely know what kind of systems they have booted on. Leon says, what is your main build system, i.e. i386 GCC? I'm not sure what that refers to, like the main compiler I use on my machine? If so, I guess that's GCC. And it's a x86 64 system, so x86 64 GCC. Yes, that's my default compiler. But maybe I'm misunderstanding the question. Well says, I watched your Windows/Mac versus Linux commute talk. Did your opinions on Mac change after the M1 Max chip? M1 Max is so powerful. Wouldn't it still be good enough for programming? What are your views? So I haven't tried the M1 computers, but my feeling about Apple systems is that they are sluggish, not because of hardware, but because of software. If you look at iOS, iOS is significantly less sluggish than macOS. macOS is sluggish because of software issues. Now, I haven't used macOS for quite a while. It's been over a year since, or it's been almost a year now since my MacBook that I was using previously started crapping out on me. So it's been a while since I've used it. But while I was working there, while I was working at Apple, I was very often doing performance analysis work on macOS, and I was very well aware of various performance issues in the sort of in the software stack there were just all these layers of things on top of each other that all needed targeted performance work to improve. And when you are constantly profiling something, you just become very familiar with the parts that are slow. And I'm really happy with using Linux as my main development environment because it doesn't have slowness in those particular parts that always bothered me about macOS. Now, it's possible that this has changed about macOS, so I don't know. And of course, when I say Linux, I am specifically referring to the way I've set up my Linux machine. There are certainly ways to configure your Linux desktop so that it will be crappy and slow. Just in case we have some very detailed-oriented person in the chat who's going to correct me on that. Let's see. Mati says, have you seen Compiz Fusion? Is it possible to run it with Serenity Windows Server? Compiz Fusion, I don't know what that is. I know about Compiz, which... what is Compiz Fusion? Okay, just give me a screenshot so I can get a picture of it. Okay, so it's like all this, all this fun eye candy stuff that became popular around like 2005, 2006, or whenever that was. When was that? 2006, yeah. I remember installing it at the time and thinking it was just awesome. And ultimately I ran with it for a while and then I disabled it because it was just so irritating, like that the windows would wobble around, but it looked really cool. It is not possible to run that with Serenity's window manager or Windows Server in any way because they are just completely different software stacks with different protocols. Chris BL says, hey Andreas, just wondering, what's your opinion on the C++ standard template library? You've obviously made your own alternative with ACK, which in my mind is way better in many aspects. Just curious about your thoughts. Oh, my opinion about the C++ STL is that it has a lot of things that I don't need, and it makes programs take a very long time to compile when you use it. So I tend to prefer not to use it because I like to write really large programs, and compile time is already a problem. If we were to add the C++ STL to the mix, it would become an even bigger problem in my experience. So that is sort of one of my, I guess my main problem with it is the compile time and the fact that it has all this functionality that I don't need. And then on a more personal or taste note, I don't like the way that it looks. I think, I mean, it's completely subjective, but I always feel like lowercase class names just look so goofy. But yeah, like the sheer amount of unnecessary functionality and the slowness, those are my issues with it. GT Buzz 86 says, what is your favorite Linux/Unix window manager from the 90s/early 2000s? From the 90s, my favorite window manager for sure is FVWM. That was the shit in the 90s. And I think this was the first window manager I ever used. Look at a screenshot. Oh, look at this thing. It's actually skinned to look like IRIX. Or is it IRIX? I can't. No, it's Linux, but it's skinned to look like IRIX. I like FVWM. And then in the 2000s, early 2000s, I think I was using Metacity, of course, which was part of the GNOME desktop, and also Window Maker. I was a big fan of Window Maker for a long time. That's what I was using. Window Maker. Very, very nice. Next step like window manager. Let's see. PH says, hi Andreas, are there any conference talks that had a big impact on the way you write code? I wish I could say yes and point you to an awesome talk, but the answer is probably no. I haven't really watched a conference talk that made me come away from it feeling like, oh my goodness, I need to be doing things differently. Maybe I'm slow or something. I tend not to have this eureka experience so quickly when hearing somebody talk about something. For me, it requires that I sort of sit down and massage a bunch of code and like try things out for myself, and that's when I have those experiences. And the really transformative experiences tend to happen like after I'm exposed to something, like somebody shows me some little thing, or I notice something that somebody's doing, and then I try it out for myself and I spend some time with it. Then I slowly experience this feeling of like, wow, this is so cool. But at the same time, like maybe I did have that experience as a result of watching a conference talk that then changed the way I write code later down the line. But because I'm slow in that way, I don't know how to trace it back to where it actually came from. That said, I do enjoy conference talks. I remember when I was commuting, I used to commute for an hour in each direction every day. And this was back when I was doing commute talk videos. And I would usually do the commute talk in the morning, and then in the afternoon I was too tired to talk, so I would just find some like programming conference talk and then put that on and just listen to somebody talk about programming while driving home. But no, I don't have one to show you. I'm sorry. James Brown says, honestly, I can't even believe how much things have improved in those 3 years. Indeed, we've done a lot in the last 3 years. It's been pretty bananas. And then we have a super chat from David Nuon with $5. Thank you very much, David. I really appreciate that. There is no message here, so I would just say thank you so much for the super chat. And another super chat from Ron P with a jumping game controller. Very happy looking. Thank you very much, Ron P. I really appreciate the super chats. Let's see. James Brown says, I think I'm going to try and contribute to Serenity in the next year. I'm quite comfortable with C, but C++ looks much more complex. Right. C++ is more complex than C, but you can introduce that complexity incrementally into your life. What I usually recommend to people nowadays is if they have a good foundation that they feel that they know C, what they can do is they can pick one or two features from C++ that seem useful to them, and they can start to just like rename your C files to .cpp instead of .c, and then start using one or two C++ features in your code and leave the rest as is for now. Like, don't try to do a wholesale conversion into like idiomatic C++, but just introduce one or two features and get comfortable with them, and then incrementally introduce C++ into your life, into your code base, so that you can sort of work with and get a taste for each feature individually. Let's see. Michael says, I think you kind of answered this once in a commute video, but how do you handle unit tests you wrote for fixing bugs? Commit the failing test first, how I do it, or both together? I don't have strong feelings about that. I guess I kind of like the idea of making the test first, just because that gives you sort of, well, actually, hold on. No, I actually don't like the idea of committing the test first, because that means that you're introducing a point in time where if you were to like build your branch at that specific commit, then tests would fail. So I would think I would prefer to either commit the failing test but skip it first, and then commit the fix and enable the test. But I'm a big fan of having a branch that always builds, even though, of course, sometimes accidents happen and things get screwed up. I think it's something that's worth kind of trying to stick to as much as you can. So for that reason, I would say committing them together, or committing the test but skipping it first and then only enabling it once it would pass. Firefox317 says, so you said you worked on KDE. Why are you not using KDE for your desktop environment anymore? So I worked on KDE in the 3 days, KDE 3. I worked on KDE 3.3, 3.4, and 3.5 series. And I worked a little bit on the early stages of KDE 4, at which point I became very disillusioned with the KDE project, because I felt like they were going into an area where I just didn't agree with the direction of the project. I felt like they were prioritizing visual fluff instead of the functionality that I cared about. As you all know, I'm a fan of traditional desktop interfaces. I don't need desktop widgets and things like that. And the KDE 4 people, they just wanted to do this whole plasma thing. It was not interesting to me, so I lost interest, and I haven't really regained that interest since. And Mate provides a very simple desktop that does everything I need at the moment on my Linux machine, so I just use that. Paul Rath says, what's the current count of regular SerenityOS developers as opposed to committers? I don't know. Like, what is the qualification for a regular SerenityOS developer? Unless we decide what that means, I don't know. Assistol says, afternoon, Andreas. Afternoon to you too. I haven't seen you in forever, but I remember your name commenting on videos a long time ago. So it's good to see you here. Rutbjörn says, hello, Kling. Hello to Rutbjörn. Unexplored says, how has the coronavirus affected you? Did you encounter inconveniences? Not really. I haven't been inconvenienced really at all. I live in Sweden, where it's not really something that inconveniences you in your daily life. Let's see. Paul Ratt says, what's the current daily commit level? Is it up since the talks and interviews? The daily commit level, that really fluctuates. I don't have a number. We could probably like extract one. I feel like in the last couple of days it has been a bit lower than usual, but then suddenly it will just burst up again. And I prefer to look at it on a month-to-month basis, because that's when you get a sort of better picture. And I think our last month was something like 1,200 commits or something like that. And it tends to fluctuate between 1,000 commits and 2,000 commits a month. So pretty wide range. Linus actually, he usually posts tweets about this. Let's go and see if he has one. I bet he does. See, I can even see it over here. Yeah, so he has this like tweet chain or whatever. Quote tweet chain. So in the last month we had 1312 commits, which you know, if we do a little bit of math here, 1312 divided by, say, 30, that's about 43 commits a day. 43 commits per day, so that's pretty juicy. My goodness. Yeah, so pretty good pace. By the way, if you are on Twitter but you're not following Linus, do follow Linus if you want to hear about SerenityOS stuff. He frequently posts about that, so don't want people to miss out. Even though I tend to retweet anything he posts about SerenityOS, I still encourage you to follow him in case I miss something. Let's see. Baiting Q says, have you ever thought of implementing a custom C++ compiler for Serenity? I mean, I've thought about it, and there was some effort towards beginning work on that at one point, but then it kind of died out because nobody really took ownership of that project. It's not something I'm super interested in doing currently, but we'll see what we do later. Who knows? Basically, everything that happens in SerenityOS is driven by people's personal interest and desire to have fun with programming. So if somebody were to decide tonight that they are going to build a new C++ compiler for Serenity, then there's not that much we can do to stop them. And we would probably just try to help them out instead. But if nobody does, then nothing will happen. Leon says, I was meaning to ask which toolchain you mainly use to build Serenity. Oh, I see. So I tend to use GCC, the GCC toolchain. I do have the Clang toolchain built, but I'm using the GCC toolchain primarily. I don't know that one is better than the other, so that's just it's just what I'm used to using, so I'm using that. Big Smoke CIC says, for the ELF executable loader written as a Linux executable you mentioned you began with, once you found a function you wanted to call, how did you know the calling convention of said function? Sorry if this is too specific, maybe I should just check out your code at this point. So this is in reference to like the very early beginnings of the Serenity project, where I was hacking on an ELF loader, or sort of a JIT linker. And to answer your question, at the time, I think I was just like hard coding the calling conventions for when I was doing this, I was using a really old version of Linux. I had like Slackware 11 or something like that. So like a distro from 2006 I was using on a 686 machine. So whatever the calling convention was on that system, and I just used that. I didn't do anything fancy to try to like figure out the calling convention. I just looked at the assembly and figured like, oh, so it's trying to use this register. I guess that's where I should put my argument, or maybe it was on the stack. I don't even remember. Whatever that system was doing, that's what I was doing. Ben Benton says, are those prescription glasses? If yes, plus or minus? Yes, they are prescription glasses. They are minus, I think -5. Let's see. Mustafa says, now that you're a developer for a Ruby compiler, what are your thoughts on the language? I have still not written that much Ruby, so I don't have an opinion about the language. Sorry. Kanak says, what is your opinion on using Rust instead of C++ for operating system development and other projects? I have not written enough Rust to really have an opinion on that language. Let's see. Cbot says, hello, is the Serenity kernel a high memory kernel? High memory kernel. Do you mean if we put the kernel in a high part of the address space? If so, the answer is yes. On x86, we put the kernel in the top 1 GB of the virtual address space, and we have a similar scheme on x86 64. If you mean something else, I don't know what you mean. Mustafa with the super chat. Thank you very much, Mustafa. Mustafa has been loving the regular hacking videos again. Nice. I'm glad to hear that. I really like making hacking videos, and I have a nice idea for my next one, so I'm going to record that tomorrow, I think, after I sleep a lot. Hopefully that will become something nice. Let's see. Thomas Payton says, I love how your tea is listed in the description. Yes, I have I have listed the Earl Grey tea in the description because I managed to get an affiliate link for that tea. Now, I have never made any money with my affiliate link because nobody ever buys tea through my affiliate link. But I have a principle for myself and for this YouTube channel that I will never promote anything that I don't personally use. So that really limits the things I can promote. But since I drink Earl Grey tea every day, I want to promote that since it's something I can promote. So I do have an affiliate link for it. But you can also buy Twinings Earl Grey probably in your nearest grocery store because they're available around the world. And speaking of promoting things, I recently have had a bunch of different offers to promote various things, and I ended up having to turn everything down because they were not things I was interested in using. And it really does feel weird to turn down money for what is essentially a really easy job. Like just, just tell people, hey, check out this thing. But I feel like I have to stick to my principles on this. Like, since I don't use these things, like it's not appropriate for me to tell others to use them. It is what it is. But I'm doing fine without promoting things that I don't know about. So let's see. Mad 3011 says, when you stage part of a change set with git add -p, how do you make sure you're not inadvertently committing a broken build? Do you just eyeball it? Well, yes, usually I am eyeballing it, but it is true that sometimes there have been accidents, but it's fairly rare. What you can do, of course, is to just do your incremental commit, and then you stash, try a build, and then pop your stash, right? That would be one way to sort of systematically check that it's fine. That's maybe a habit that I should try to adopt, actually. It seems really reasonable to, like, after making a commit, just stash whatever I have, verify that it builds. It's good that you brought that up. I gotta remember to do that more often. Alex Gravener says, enjoyed the Ruby compiler video. Very cool to highlight the project. Yes, indeed. I'm glad that people enjoy that video. The Natalie programming language certainly is a fun project, and if you're not already subscribed to Tim on YouTube, I definitely recommend people check him out. If you ever run out of my videos, you can always find more videos on Tim's channel in a very similar style to my own, just that he works on other types of problems. So definitely recommend his channel. And Jean-Michel with the big super chat. Thank you so much. That is awesome. Hello, friend. And hello, friend, to you too, Jean-Michel. I really appreciate the super chat. Really, really lovely with all the support. And it's so nice to be back here doing office hours. I really did not enjoy being sick. And it's good to be back at the computer doing stuff. Doing programming and stuff like that. Donatas says, hey Andres, glad to have finally caught you live. Well, nice to see you here. Donatas, that sounds like a vaguely Lithuanian name or something like that. A Lithuanian masculine name. Indeed. That is a cool name, actually. So let's see. Well says, will Serenity have support for game engines in the future? Unreal/Unity. For that, I would refer you to the FAQ, which you can see the URL in the bottom left, in the pin message right here, in the chat, and also, where do we have it? Yes, here. Will you implement thing for Serenity? I don't really have a plan for things to implement. Also, will it be possible to do something in SerenityOS? If someone implements it, it will be possible. If somebody doesn't implement it, it will not be possible. But fundamentally, if you want something to happen in SerenityOS, it's really up to you to make it happen. And that is really a common question. And I understand that people are curious about what things will happen in the future, but the true answer is that nobody knows. But the fun part is that you can affect what happens in the future by participating in the project. So if you want to see something like Unreal Engine or Unity running on Serenity, that's something that you yourself could work towards. Mustafa says, does the Clang toolchain support the try macro now? I remember talking about how it was a GCC extension. It's a GCC extension, but it's one that is fully supported by Clang. So Clang has always supported the try macro. Donata says, I was wondering, can you use standard libraries when writing code in Hack Studio, or is Stud completely not in Serenity? I think you can use it just fine. If you build a GCC port, the GCC port comes with a copy of STL. So I think, but I don't know if I ever tried. There might be something that goes wrong because I don't know if anybody's tried it, but I don't see why it shouldn't work. So just try it out. Marek says, can you use address sanitizer to discover bugs in Serenity? You could if you build something with address sanitizer. We don't have address sanitizer in Serenity directly, but we do have our own thing, which is we do have our own thing called UE, or user space emulator, and it is like Valgrind sort of on other Unix systems. It's a CPU emulator that instruments memory access. So you can run a program with a UE like this, and it just instruments the entire execution and catches memory leaks and use after freeze, stuff like that, without modifying the binary. So you don't need to compile with ASAN for that to work. There has been some effort towards integrating ASAN support, but I don't think it's complete yet. Let's see. Andrew Castor says there's only one calling convention for C functions in the Itanium ABI-based systems. Okay. Cool. That's probably in reference to something I said that I already forgot. So thank you, Andrew, for filling people in. See, it's a bit silly when I get so far behind in the chat, because then there's always like contextual comments, and like by the time I get to them, then I don't remember what I was saying. Waffle GD informs us that they are fat. That's a riveting tale, my friend. Let's see. Mustak says, "Hi Andreas, I saw your previous video on Natalie. I found that call grind is a bit odd. Don't know much about that. It's a bit old. Don't know much about that. Could you please share thoughts on this or suggest alternate?" I don't know what that means. Call grind is a bit old. Share my thoughts on that or suggest alternate? What's the problem? That it's old? I don't understand the question, sorry. Let's see, Carlos asking, are you doing the Advent of Code this year? No, I'm not. Although I did see your tweets about it, and it sounds like you're having fun, so good on you. And Vesna has a bunch of Mando Diao song recommendations that we'll have to check out after the stream. Maybe I will listen to Mando Diao in the car when I drive to the train station. Aris says, I like your contribution to the Natalie video. Oh yes, I would like more contribution to other OS projects, and is contribution to other project distraction to your project, or can help to find other views/ideas? I think that it's definitely helpful to contribute to other projects occasionally. It's something that I missed doing, and I really enjoyed making some changes to another project the other day. It was fun, and it was fun to just be in a different code base where things work differently, and you get to have that sort of unfamiliar feeling, and it's a lot of fun to try to figure out a system that you don't know inside and out, and I think it can definitely help come up with new ideas. So it's something that I want to do more of for sure. Let's see. Ewan says, could you talk through your use of Git and pull requests? I notice you rebase and merge. Where I work, we're told to squash and merge and not touch rebase. Interested to hear your thoughts. I like to rebase and merge, because then you create a very neat and beautiful history where if you browse through the commits in the Git log, you see step by step how the system was built. And because we ask everybody and we socially enforce that people make nice atomic commits that incrementally transform the code base towards what we want it to be, we end up with a history that's like very, very descriptive and it tells a story, right? That you can go back then and read this story whenever you want to figure out why something is the way that it is. And I personally feel that squash and merge is it's a very depressing workflow, because you sort of compress the stories that you're telling with your code. So imagine that you have this complex set of changes that you have meticulously described, like first do this, that's one commit, then do this other thing, that's another commit. And then by the time it comes to integrate, when it comes time to integrate that in the code base, you just sort of mash it all together into one commit. You are compressing history into and like it's like compressing an image. You're losing detail, and I feel like that detail is valuable when it comes to code archaeology and like figuring out why something is the way that it is. So that's the main reason that I like rebase and merge instead of squash and merge, because you allow the code base to tell the story. Of course, projects that do squash and merge tend to have much more relaxed policies on like commits. So if you're in a project where you know that your stuff is going to be squashed anyway, you're probably not going to put that much care into making really nice individual commits. And for that reason, people who are used to a squash and merge workflow often don't immediately understand the benefits of a rebase and merge workflow. So it does take some getting used to, but I think it's worth trying out. And like if you look through our Git history in the Serenity project, you can see sort of what you might end up with if you use a rebase and merge workflow. James Brown says the tea is sold out. Cool. Sorry about that. Maybe I should look into that. Carlos says, what is the latest C++ features you found out and liked a lot? Oh, the latest C++ feature I found out. I don't even remember. I mean, it was probably something in C++ 20. I mean, the latest one I learned about was from C++ 23 was called deducing this. Yeah, deducing this. I was listening to the CPP Cast podcast the other day. They had, I think it was Gasper who was on there talking about the deducing this proposal. And it was really interesting. So let me see if I can find that. Yes, it was Gasper. So I was listening to this just the other day. Super interesting, actually. Interesting new feature that makes some things a little nicer, which is always good. Let's see. Mustafa says, so you promote Linus because you use him. That's a bit weird. Okay, again, I've probably lost context for what I said where this comment makes sense. Sorry. Principles are important, says Thomas. Props for sticking to them. Yeah, I think principles are important indeed. Let's see. Simon says, in your opinion, what kind of feature set should a default bundled with OS program target? For example, difference in roadmap of GIMP and Pixel Paint. Well, I don't necessarily think that Pixel Paint needs to have fewer features than GIMP. I have a set of features that I use in GIMP or Photoshop or Pixelmator or whatever image editor I'm using, and those are the ones I care to see in Pixel Paint. But I don't know that there's like a feature in GIMP, for example, where if somebody said, hey, let's do this in Pixel Paint, would make me go, oh, no, that's too much. That's more something like a dedicated image editor or whatever. I think if something is a useful image editing feature, then it's a candidate for Pixel Paint. Let's see. Roman says, wouldn't it make sense to have a pre-commit hook for your gap command? We have a lot of those in our code base. Do you mean that it would automatically build after doing a gap? I don't know how to configure that. Donatas says that he is indeed Lithuanian. Haha. Looking forward to moving to Sweden in the coming months. That is nifty. I'm curious to see how that goes. I don't think I've ever met a Lithuanian person in Sweden, but I have met a number of few outside of Sweden. And I've also visited your country once, which was absolutely great. Let's see. George858 says, are there any other programming YouTube channels in a similar style to yours and Tim's? Sure, I know of a couple. So if you go to my channel, and I mean, you are already on my channel because you're watching the stream, but if you go under channels, I have put a bunch of other channels here, and some of these are also like similar programming type channels to mine. So Valtteri does ray tracing in C, and Dimitri is doing a compiler, and Adam does database stuff, building a database, although I don't know if he's uploaded lately, but he has a bunch of videos about building a database. And definitely recommend those channels as well. I mean, I recommend all the channels that I put here in my channels tab. That's why I put them in my channels tab. And there's probably more channels. I just forget what they're called. I need to put more channels here. I just need to remember which ones I wanted to put. Let's see. Hello, Space Traveler 5000. That is a very cool nickname. Ron P says, JvidX9 does programming videos, but focused on games and usually not live. Yeah, JvidX9 is, that's a lovely channel. The One Lone Coder, definitely recommend. Sometimes I watch those just because it's fun to see how he draws the different things that he explains on his tablet. Let's see. Patrick says, since you like the single source approach, how do you feel about people building tools on various other runtimes that exist within Serenity, like Electron-esque app that works within libjs? If that's what you want to do, then try it out. I have a feeling about how it would turn out, but I don't want to be prejudiced, so I will not share that feeling. Donata says, thank you for your videos. Watching you over the last year has relit my passion for programming and taught me more than anything else. Thank you very much for the super chat. I really appreciate that, and I hope that you will have a nice move to Sweden. Very much appreciate that. Thank you. Let's see. Alex says, has anyone attempted a word processor or presentation software in Serenity? My guess, it is quite a big undertaking, but so is a browser. There has not been a direct attempt that I know of. We had a discussion at one point about starting to build some fundamentals for a word processor, and my intuition at the time was that it would be good to build it on top of web technology. So basically, I thought if we could leverage our layout engine that we have for CSS and HTML and like build sort of a word processor on top of that, we would only need to have one layout engine. And if we make it CSS based, it would be sort of something that would be easy to understand instead of just building a completely separate layout engine. And somebody did a bunch of work on HTML editing with this in mind, but then that kind of fizzled out. So there isn't really any serious work on this at the moment. But I haven't thought about it recently, but I feel like my original intuition still stands. Like, I feel like it would be cool to build it on top of the web engine, because you could just take advantage of what we already know about layout there. Let's see. Ewan says, thanks, Andreas, for answering rebase merge versus squash merge. Sounds like something to try and see if I can improve our workflow in the office. I'm happy to see you try it, and we'll see how it goes. Let's see. Roman says, regarding git pre-commit hook for gap, you can put a script into git hooks event, which can interrupt some of those events by exiting with a non-zero exit code. We have a gradlu check, for example. Right, but in your pre-commit, like in this case, what we would need to do is like finish the commit, stash remaining changes, try to build, and if that fails, or after that build, unstash and so on. So I feel like it's a bit of a weird case, because you have to actually manipulate the Git repo state within that pre-commit hook. So I don't know if you can do that cleanly, but I also haven't tested it, so I don't know. Gustavo says, hey Andres, first time here. Your videos and project really inspired me to study more about OS development. Thinking about making one for embedded systems. Thanks. That is great. Welcome to the channel, and I'm happy to hear that you feel inspired to learn more about operating systems. I think it is a fantastically fun area myself, obviously, and it's one of those things where it's just, and there's just an endless amount of things you can do with it, right? You can build anything. So interested to see what you end up doing. I haven't done embedded OS work myself at least not for a very long time, and nothing like what I do these days. Only like very simple, sort of single process, simple CPU systems. So I hope you have fun with that. Sebastian says, I think Word at some point used pseudo HTML and CSS in their file format. I don't know how that format works. I did spend some time, a long time ago, I spent some time on K-Office. I worked on some performance improvements for, I think for the, they had an importer for Microsoft Word files, and I feel like I did some performance work on that thing, but I didn't spend enough time to actually understand the format. It was more like just using a profiler to find bottlenecks and fixing up some algorithms to be more smarter. Let's see. Big Smoke CIC says, what is your relationship with game development? Have you ever considered it, at least in the least, or done anything in that space? No, I haven't. I have no relationship with game development. Really, I guess like every programmer, at some point I thought maybe I should try to make a game, but I never spent more than a few days on any project like that before just becoming incredibly uninterested in what I was doing, and that was usually my signal that it was time to do something else. Let's see, Mustafa, what are some of your candidates for best Serenity feature of the last few weeks? Not by you. Oh, wow, that's a good question. I don't even remember. I'm totally blanked out on what people have been doing. I think probably the stuff that Sam was doing with the settings is my favorite recent thing. Like adding browser settings app and sprucing up the keyboard settings, and just and then Linus did the terminal settings. So just like turning these, like terminal settings used to be like a window in the terminal app. Keyboard settings used to be ugly, and browser settings used to be editing a text file. So these are all huge improvements, like bringing them into the system, the global system settings framework. And I really like that people are sort of helping out to expand our system settings. And I feel like it just makes the system feel better and better. And I also like what Sam did with adding a settings window abstraction, so that all of these settings windows have a simplified interface for just creating that style of UI. Just all in all, very nice stuff. And in regards to settings here, I think I'm a really big fan of the way settings works on mobile devices, like on iOS, for example, where you have a dedicated settings applications, and then in that application you find settings for each individual other app. Somehow I really dig that. I feel like there's something about that spatial paradigm or whatever that makes sense to me, that settings can be accessed not only through the app itself, but also through a lens of system settings. So really dig what we've got going on here, and appreciate people helping out with it. Cbot says, you skipped one of my questions. Sorry about that. What did I miss? Cbot says, question mark star. When developing the kernel, what is the most useful feature you've used in C++ that C doesn't have? This is probably constructors and destructors, for sure. That is like the killer feature. That I just really love being able to use constructors and destructors to create RAII objects to simplify resource management. It's just such a huge improvement, I think, to development style, to not have to worry about like calling free at before every return from a function, but you can just encapsulate that in a stack object that takes care of whatever you want to do in its destructor. Constructors and destructors are, yeah, they're my favorite C++ feature of all time, and nothing even comes close. I don't know C++ very well, he says. How does constructors and right, so that you can make something that just goes on the stack. So let me just type something out here. We'll just slap something in this random C++ program. So say that we have a class foo, and here you would say something, also something, and then if you do this, then this function will print something when it's entered, and whichever return statement is used to exit this function, before we return, we will always print also something. And that is just a really kick-ass trick, because you can do anything in that destructor and it will execute like right before every return, automagically. And I seriously encourage anybody to familiarize themselves with the utility of constructors and destructors, because they can simplify so much of your code if you figure out what to use them for. And that beeping sound was my alarm that I need to wrap things up and go and pick up my relatives at the train. So we need to wrap it up. So let's see. Mustafa said, the problem with the iOS style stuff is that many times you cannot access the settings within the app itself. So to change something, you need to context switch to the settings one, which is annoying. Right. That's certainly true. And it's something that we can do better. We can, for example, in the terminal, we can still allow you to open the settings from right here. And this just brings up the terminal settings UI. by launching the terminal settings application. So we're not really limited by the way iOS settings works. It's just that we can have that view as well. I think it's like a nice complement, right? I'm gonna have to go because I can't be late for the train. So I'm gonna wrap it up here. Thank you all very, very much for coming to office hours. I really appreciate all the questions. It's really great to be back and to see everybody. And super thanks to all the super chatters. Really appreciate the support. And I look forward to the next time, I guess. And also, of course, as I always like to say, if you end up working on SerenityOS this weekend, please come to Discord and talk with us about what you're doing, so that we can share in the fun. I will see you all next time.